Chapter 7. There were 8 seats set around the dinner table, and I was at the head since it was my birthday. Dad was sitting at the other end so he could go in and out of the kitchen whenever he realised he'd forgotten something. Gran and Grandad sat along one side with an empty seat between them. That was where Mam was supposed to be. And facing them were Luke Kennedy, his mam, and Benjamin Benson, who was keeping the conversation alive. My father spent most of the war in jail, he told us. He was a conscientious objector, you see. He couldn't stand all that fighting. He was a pacifist all his life. Really? Said Grandad, raising an eyebrow. Something told me he didn't think too much of people who'd done that, but we'd read about them in school and I wasn't so sure. Spent half his life on peace marches, Mr. Benson continued. Got himself thrown in the slammer again during the 70s. When that old warmonger Nixon came to visit. That's what got me interested in the law, you see. The way they treated a simple man who didn't want to hurt anybody. You're quite right, said Grandad cheerfully. It probably would have been a damn sight better if we'd all ended up speaking German and goose-stepping around Trafalgar Square. It was 7:15 already, and Mam was 15 minutes late, and no one was saying anything about it. Did you get any nice presents, Danny? Asked Mrs. Kennedy. I didn't get anything, I said, shaking my head as if I couldn't quite believe it myself. You didn't get anything? Asked Luke in amazement. On your birthday? Now, that's not true, Danny, said Dad quickly. Your gran bought you a lovely jumper, didn't she? Oh, yes, I said, remembering the green knitted jumper that I'd put in the wardrobe earlier and that I would never, on pain of death, wear. That's right, I forgot, and Grandad gave me some money. Money? Asked Gran, staring at Grandad and pursing her lips. What did I tell you? Oh, it was just a few pounds for the lad, said Grandad dismissively. Dry up, woman. I have something outside for you, Danny, said Mrs. Kennedy. It's not much, just a book. I'll give it to you after dinner. And I forgot to give you this, said Dad, reaching across to the sideboard and handing me an envelope. It came second post. I smiled when I saw the familiar handwriting. There was a happy retirement card inside rather than a birthday card, which was the kind of thing that Pete always did because he thought it was funny. He never got the right card for the right occasion. There was a £10 note in it too. I read the card quickly and felt relieved, as I thought he'd forgotten about me until then. I'd wondered whether he'd show up for the party, but he'd called a couple of nights before from Amsterdam, and he wasn't making any sense at all on the phone. Dad took it off me and told him not to bother again until he got his head clear. So why did you say you didn't get anything? Asked Luke. He meant that he didn't get anything from his mam and me, explained Dad. We'll take him out over the weekend and buy him something special then. But that's not the same, said Luke. You have to get it on your birthday or it doesn't count. Be quiet, Luke, and eat your dinner, said Mrs. Kennedy. But we haven't been given any dinner yet, he said in surprise, and I had to bite my lip to stop myself from laughing. He's quite right, said Dad, looking at his watch. She's 25 minutes late now. She'll be here, Russell, said Gran. I'm glad you feel so confident. One of us should have gone out with her, said Gran. Made sure she was all right. Maybe I should go take a look for her, suggested Mrs. Kennedy. Perhaps she went for a walk. You don't want to go walking around here too late at night, said Benjamin Benson, scratching his beard. You're likely to get yourself mugged, or killed, or worse. Your father has a funny way of looking at things, Grandad told Luke. He's not my father, said Luke. I could just take a quick walk around the neighbourhood and see if I can... No, said Dad, slapping a hand down on the table and making everyone jump. No one said anything for a moment. We just stared at him. She's half an hour late now, and we're all hungry, and besides, it's Danny's birthday. It's time to eat. Belinda, he said, looking across at Gran, perhaps you'd help me serve up the meal. And with that, he went into the kitchen, and I knew that the 8th seat at my birthday dinner would be remaining empty for the night. By 9:15, we were eating the birthday cake when the door opened and quietly, like a ghost, Mam entered the room. What's going on? She asked, Oh yes, I forgot. You were cooking tonight, weren't you? For 7 o'clock, Dad said. You said you'd be home by then. I got delayed, she said. I'm sorry, It's not good enough, he said, his voice holding firm. It's not good enough at all. It's Danny's birthday, and you said you'd... Russell, I said I'm sorry, she snapped. I got delayed. You were never coming. Oh, just shut up, Russell, for God's sake, she snapped, and we all jumped, except for Dad, who remained perfectly still before standing up and walking over to her. Don't shout at me, he said clearly, pausing between his words. Rachel, dear, why don't you sit down and I'll heat you up some? She can't have any, said Dad, turning to look at Gran, who immediately fell quiet and nodded, knowing who was in charge here. If she can't make it home in time for dinner, then she doesn't get any. I heard Mom gasp, but didn't want to look at her. She gasped again, almost laughing. If I don't get here in time, I can't have any? She asked, amazed. What am I? 8 years old? Yes, Mother, if you could heat some up for me, that would be lovely. Stay where you are, Belinda, said Dad, who stepped up close to my mother now, saying nothing, just staring at her as if he hardly knew her anymore. We all watched, holding our breaths. This time when she spoke, her voice cracked a little, as if she knew that there was a long-awaited battle coming up, but she really wanted to put it off. Just for another day or so, just until she felt a little stronger. I'm sorry, she said quietly, her eyes filling with tears. I've had enough of this, Rachel, said Dad. We all have. You've had enough, she shouted, finding her voice again suddenly. This was who she was now, I realised. From one moment to the next, I never knew what to expect. You've had enough. You don't have all this weighing down on your conscience, Russell. You didn't nearly kill a child. You don't have to live with that, do you? And neither do you, he said, remaining firm. It was an accident. The boy is still alive, and Danny is alive too, in case you hadn't noticed. And Pete is alive. What about the kids, Rachel? Can't you think about them for once? I turned in my chair to look at her, feeling the tears beneath my lids now too. She looked at me for a moment and shook her head. There's only one who matters, she said, and I knew she didn't mean me. I normally would have thought she meant Pete, because he was her favourite. But tonight I knew the only kid who mattered was Andy. It was much later that night, past 11 o'clock. I was wheeling the bins outside for the morning collection when I heard a voice whispering my name. Danny, the voice said. Danny, over here. I glanced around quickly, trying to make out where it was coming from, and just as I did so, she stepped out from behind a tree. Sarah, I said, walking towards her. You came back. I'm sorry, she told me. I wasn't sure if I should. I'm glad you did. I can't stay very long, she said. If they find out I'm not at home, there'll be trouble. I nodded. I wanted to tell her that it was my birthday, but I couldn't find a way to say it. I wondered what she'd do if she knew. Whether she'd kiss me. There was something I wanted to ask you, she said. What? What are you doing on Monday? Nothing, I said. I'm going to the hospital on my own that afternoon, she told me. Mum and Dad won't be there till night time. Will you come with me? I hesitated, unsure whether I really wanted to see what Mum had done to her brother or not. I stared down at the ground, knowing this might be a bad idea. Please, Danny, she said. I'd like you to see him. Why did you say it was all your fault? I asked her. What? That day in the park, you said it was your fault, not Mum's. What did you mean by that? Now it was her turn to hesitate, and she looked away for a moment before turning back to me and nodding. Because she began, but before she could say anything else, the side door opened and I heard Dad stepping out. Danny, he called. Danny, are you out here? What's keeping you? 4 o'clock on Monday, whispered Sarah, grabbing my arm. I'll see you outside the hospital then. I'll explain everything. I promise. And with that, she darted off down the street. Danny, said Dad, coming up to me. What are you doing standing out here on your own? Come back inside. I nodded. I was just coming, I said.